Hello and welcome to an old banger of a game for the Commodore 64, Pole Position. As you can see from the copyright, 1982 Namco, 1983 Atari. Yeah, it's an old game, definitely. And no, it is not a dancing game, it is a racing game. So, just to clarify, this is going to be a dual game video. Um, it got a sequel some years after this, and the games are very similar in nature, so I didn't want to put 2 4 5 minute videos out, so I decided to combine them into one. But let us first focus on Pole Position. Pole Position was one of the first arcade games I remember seeing. If memory serves me right, and bear in mind I would have been around 11 years old at the time, it was controlled using a steering wheel, a gear shift lever, and a pedal for acceleration. You started by racing a qualifying lap, and that would determine bonus points and your starting position, even though positions in this game ultimately doesn't matter. It is not a race that's depending on position, it's a race that's depending on beating the timer. The main point of this game, outside of the racing aspect obviously, is a score chaser. And Namco made a decision when designing this game that probably backfired a bit on them. Is that in the way that even you have a finite amount of playtime. Once you've qualified, you get to race, and assuming you're not running out of time before you complete the race, once the race is done, and that's it. Game over. The bonus points are tallied, and that's your score. And there's no second tracks, there's no continuous loops. You play the predetermined amount of laps, or you race the predetermined amount of laps, and once completed, that's it. Of course, other arcade games, if you're good enough, allowed you to play for hours on end, and I could assume that some people might have been complaining about the fact that for the cost of playing a game in the arcades, whatever cost it would have been for the individual, you had less value for money out of a game of Pole Position than many other games. But being a score chaser, I actually find that the finite amount of time encourages you to try and do well, because you know you only have that amount of time to get the most points. And of course, in an arcade where you could potentially input your name for everyone else to see, I actually find that to be quite a nice thing, even though I can understand that some people will probably find it frustrating. But of special things to mention about this game, it contains this lovely sound which is going to come up, and then I'm going to run through the technical aspects of this game. Enjoy the sound. It plays once for every car we overtook while racing. I'm going to mute it out because I don't want to drive any listeners insane by that wonky sound, but from a graphical point of view, we can probably agree this is not the prettiest game ever made for the Commodore 64, but bear in mind this is a 1983 game. The sound design is a bit but it does what it's supposed to do. But the racing experience, the feel of the race, is actually superior to many racing games that was released years later down the line. And in truth, I'm finding that somewhat embarrassing. This is one of the first racing games, definitely one of the first attempted semi-pseudo, whatever you call it, 3D racing games made on the Commodore 64. And while it may not be the most realistic game in the world, it runs super smooth. So I've played an awful lot of games down the line that did not play as well as this game did. Graphically, obvious sin, sound department, but for what it is, it's actually quite an enjoyable little game. And as we all know, all popular games get sequels, and Mindscape was responsible for the creative titled Pole Position 2. Well, the gameplay loop is essentially the same as the original game, but it didn't prevent someone from trying to, pun intended, reinvent the wheel. You do a qualifying lap and then you do a race, just like in the original game. But have changes, as you can probably see, the graphics been spiced up a bit. I suppose that is an improvement. It's much more defined as a racing car compared to the original game, but it actually runs slower than the original game. It doesn't run poorly, but it definitely runs slower than the original game. The sound is horrible. The engine sound is an idling sound, not an acceleration sound. It's super easy to tell that it is a sound effect loop, and to be honest, after playing this game for a while, it was beginning to give me a headache. That extremely monotone looping sound was driving me a bit silly. I did not find that enjoyable at all. You don't seem to have a finite amount of laps you are racing in this version. I think I got up to lap 11 or something in this game. And while you have more cars on the road, they tend to have this odd ability to have one car driving substantially slower than the others, meaning that you continuously end up bumping into a wall of cars that you cannot get past. The hit detection between two vehicles can be rather dicey, as this is a good example of sometimes if you are in remotely the same area code as another vehicle, you will collide with it and then you get trapped because you are trying to accelerate, a car comes from behind and you get hit again. Pole position 2 is pole position, but worse. More sharpened graphics, I suppose, but a sound that is worse than the original. The only saving grace for this version is that it tallies up bonus points without coming out with this incredibly grating sound. So on that note, thanks for watching, take care, see you next time, bye bye.